Mr. Tom Hill.
Thank you, Dak. Members of the council, members of the Robert Welch Club, and members of our volunteer staff. As we meet here today in Birmingham, Alabama, in the year which soon will bring the 40th anniversary of the founding of the John Birch Society, I cannot help but look back in the Society's history and the part this region has played in that history, and to remember those no longer with us who sacrificed so much that our crusade would be launched successfully here, would withstand whatever attacks would come upon it, and would do all in their power to make it flourish despite all odds. A.G. Heinsohn from Tennessee, a giant of a patriot, fearless and uncompromising. Floyd McGowan of Alabama. Tom Parker of South Carolina. And yes, that great statesman and patriot, Larry McDonald of Georgia. And there were many, many more who I had the great opportunity to know and to work with in some truly turbulent times. They, like our founder, would be undaunted in their support for this crusade, of which you and I are a part of today. And speaking of our founder, I can't help but pause here to offer a few remarks, which I hope in the final analysis will be inspirational for you. It was my privilege to have worked with this man for over a quarter of a century. He was truly a giant of a man who so willingly and anxiously sacrificed so much for the land and the republic he loved so very much. Those sacrifices included his peace of mind and body from the day he launched this crusade. It included the sacrifice of every penny his productive life had saved for his future. He was a man who, over the last 25 years of his life, lived round the clock, 5 and 6 and 7 days and nights a week at his office, slept in stretches of only 1 or 2 hours because of his physical infirmity, never a full night's rest. And he would eat there as well some of the darndest concoctions you could ever imagine. Sardines and pig's feet from his refrigerator on saltine crackers were his favorite delicacy. I must say, though, he did urge me to partake, but he never made this an official part of my job description. His spirit rarely faded in spite of incessant attacks from the Society's enemies, and unfortunately sometimes unexpectedly from those he considered friends. Throughout, he firmly believed that the battle for the souls and bodies of men would be won. His disappointments he overcame with tenacity. His frustrations he overruled with commitment to the promises he had made to those who had joined with him in the fight. Speaking of his tenacity, I am reminded of that time immediately following the assassination of President Kennedy. As you may recall, reports out of Dallas initially condemned the hateful right wing for the horrible tragedy, and this was before the apprehension of Lee Harvey Oswald. Within but a few hours, carloads with screaming young people began circling our building at 395 Concord Avenue. Mr. Welch sat at his desk on the first floor, easily seen by these people, comprising a telegram of condolences to Mrs. Kennedy. The air from the circling cars outside was filled with obscenities, and a part of a brick came crashing through the window and landed at the front of Mr. Welch's desk. With that development, several of us attempted to interrupt Mr. Welch and get him out of his office. Our intrusion was met with defiance on his part, as well as annoyance of some significant degree, and he could be quite persuasive when he was annoyed. Once the clamor subsided, and Mr. Welch had completed his long message to Mrs. Kennedy, he came downstairs to visit with me at my office in the same building. Frankly, I was annoyed and told him that he darn near was put out of business by the brick. Whereupon I found out at that point that he was so engrossed in composing the message that he hadn't even known that a brick had landed in his office. Yes, he was certainly determined. As he said to us in the Blue Book, there was no discouragement that would allow him to quit or give less of himself to this epic undertaking. I believe that because his determination reached out and was adopted by sufficient numbers of members, that our crusade stands tall. And as I look out across this room at the supporters and volunteer leaders with us today, I am convinced of this in spades. You have carried on at the front lines and have truly made the difference. Sadly, as we look around today, missing from the Americanist and conservative landscape are literally thousands of well-intentioned organizations and organizational efforts from the battlefield, or whose effectiveness has been so diminished that they are not even a factor in the fight today. Clearly, the buck has stopped right here. Yes, in this audience, there are members I've worked with closely over 30, 35, almost 40 years ago, Jim Fitzgerald. We had the opportunity of testifying together on Long Island in the 60s when the FEC tried to close down Trim. And there is Bill Leonard, who has served so effectively on our staff, who helped strengthen so mightily our crusade in this region and particularly in South Carolina, and others, many others, who have served so long, faithfully and effectively. Let us be thankful for the dedicated leadership of the society in place today, often groping with the same frustrations and disappointments that face the society's leadership in earlier times. But they are undaunted in their effort to fulfill Mr. Welch's dream. But most of all, we thank you for keeping on with your unselfish efforts and for your generosity in helping to fuel this mighty crusade. These sacrifices in effort, in money, and in motivation, with the help of Almighty God, are those which in the end will make the difference between victory and defeat. Thank you, and may God bless you.